I was a bomb tech in the Army, several combat tours to Afghanistan. When I came back, just dealt with a lot of shit.
Sam Peterson had a gun in his mouth, finger on the trigger, minutes from ending it all. Then his phone vibrated. A friend, a message, and a moment that rewrote his entire life story.
If you have a traumatic brain injury, that's 3 times more likely to commit suicide than someone who doesn't. The medical establishment right now just says, pills, therapy, that's it.
He tried therapy, pills, military protocols, nothing worked.
I nearly took my life. I had tried all of the, traditional mental health interventions. I'd been on SSRIs, I'd been on beta blockers, I tried talk therapy. Nothing worked for me.
From the edge of suicide to the front lines of revolutionary healing. This is not just a podcast, it's a lifeline.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin.
Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Sam Peterson. He's the co-founder of Mind Spa Denver that does psychiatric and functional medicine interventions for people that struggle with PTSD, struggle with clinical mental health, and he works a lot with veterans and first responders. So Sam, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I'm curious, how'd you get into this work? What's your story?
Yeah, man, I got into this as a patient. I was a bomb tech in the Army, so I was the guy in the big green suit that went and cut wires on IEDs. Several combat tours to Afghanistan, and when I came back, just dealt with a lot of shit, and it led it to me developing a panic disorder. So, at the kind of drop of a hat, all of a sudden I would have panic attacks that would last like 2, 3, 4 hours, and that got to the point that I just didn't want to live anymore. And I had tried all of the, traditional mental health interventions. I'd been on SSRIs, I'd been on beta blockers, I tried talk therapy, and nothing worked for me. And it, eventually got so bad that, I nearly took my life. And it was one of my friends that saved me. It was literally my phone going off in my pocket that kept me from, popping my 45 that I had in my mouth at the time. And, during that kind of intervention, if you will, I got introduced to a lot of the therapies that we use today, and was able to get on the upswing and, take control of my mental health. And that led me in a much, much more positive direction. I didn't really understand, how meaningful that intervention would be until about 5 months later. I was talking to one of my mentors. We're in the motor pool, right before a field problem, right before Memorial Day, and I was the last guy to talk to him at the unit. He walked out into his backyard and shot himself in the head with his 3-year-old son in the house a couple days later, and that Neil's death really just marked me, and it made me angry more than anything, because I knew that if Neil had had the kind of experience I had had, he would still be alive, and it really became this driving force to explore what we can do to treat mental health disorders, especially chronic ones, more effectively.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. I'm curious from your story, was there a physical component? Was there a TBI component or concussion, or was it more PTSD and just chronic stress of being in a war zone? How would you, looking back, what do you think happened?
There were a lot of things that happened. I didn't get nearly the kind of combat exposure that a lot of my friends did. But there's constant, blast over pressure was a big thing. There's a ton of interpersonal stuff that was going on at the same time. I kind of got Dear John while we were over, and nothing like having your fiance start sleeping with an insurance salesman. Yeah.
That's
so
another podcast episode right there.
Right there, man. Not only is it a just a dirty that brain fart, but yeah, that whole experience was super super not good. It led me down a super dark path. And, you know, that's how I ended up in that space. And I feel like that's a space that a lot of men end up in.
Absolutely. Yeah, whether you're in combat or not, I think like that kind of betrayal definitely throws men for a loop. I think, like I said, I mean, high pressure, I can't imagine working in bomb disposal, right? Because any moment, that's it. You know, I mean, I don't know how good those green suits are, but they're probably not perfect, you know?
They're pretty damn good. You will survive a lot more than you would think in one of those, but you're not always in the bomb suit. So like, you know, I did a deployment with special forces and we were out up in the mountains. You're not wearing 90 pounds of fun climbing up the side of a mountain. It's just, you get stupid real fast in that suit. So yeah, it's either you get it right the first time or very, very, very quickly, it's no longer your problem.
That's one way to put it for sure.
Yeah, all your problems go away.
All your problems go away. Did these symptoms, if you want to call them those, like the anxiety and panic, did that show up while you were on deployment, or was it when you returned home that these things manifested? Yeah. You know, for some guys, there's like a delayed reaction. There's some to be like 5 or 6 months before anything hits.
You know what I think it is you just get so used to being in that hypervigilant state, especially as a bomb tech. You're constantly looking for like the wire sticking out of the ground or whatever. And especially our line of work, when you're on scene, you are typically being watched and recorded by the enemy. That's how they learn what you're doing, and then they can target you more effectively. And they do. It ends up being kind of this spy versus spy thing. So, you know, that we get taught to be in that frame of mind. Hey, someone's watching me. They are trying to interdict my next moves. You're kind of playing this 3-dimensional chess piece, because then if I disarm that explosive device, you know, it's not just boom, it's gone. You know, eventually you're trying to lead back to the bomb maker's door so you can, you know, just take care of it on a permanent level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole like forensic aspect to it, it sounds like, as well. You're trying to like, really diagnose like how and where it even got there, you know?
Yeah. It's, you know, you really have to do a lot of legwork to get the results you want. And that's just protecting our fellow service members on the battlefield.
Yeah. So when you came back, like what was it like? I mean, was there a delayed reaction, or was there a moment where you're like, oh my God, I'm actually not okay? You know, like how did it hit you?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a delayed reaction. It wasn't terribly long. It's probably about 1.5, 2 months later. I was walking through Walmart. I just bought a house, and you know, I'd actually gotten hurt over in Afghanistan my second tour. I got sent back early because I dislocated my knee. So I was walking through Walmart. I remember this very vividly. Was buying a TV for the new house, and had this thing like sticking out of the shopping cart at a weird angle. And as I'm walking through the Walmart in Colorado Springs, this guy just like gives me the stink eye in a really weird way. And it just threw me off. And like I went to go check out, and I noticed like, oh shit, I'm sweating. Like my heart's racing. I looked down at my Fitbit and, you know, like 110 just standing there, and it kept getting worse. And so I got in the truck. I, you know, drove up the hill home, and just went into my house and closed all the doors, locked everything, closed all the blinds, and just sat in the darkness for like 2 hours trying to bring my nervous system back in, you know, to alignment. And it didn't work. I eventually, like, still kind of in the throes of that panic attack, had to go to the gym, and I just put in screamo music and lifted until the panic went away. And that just became the pattern.
Yeah. Like doubling down on exercise and pushing it down.
Yeah. I mean, doubling down on exercise was the only way that I knew of to get anywhere with. It was the only tool I had, especially like, you know, in the military, we get taught that like drugs are bad, you know, the dare lion selling the truth in the Department of Defense. And, even though we all know that motherfucker was lying to us the whole time. So it was really, I had nothing but alcohol to cope with it. And it works in the moment sometimes, but it leads to more inflammation in the brain. It leads to more of those kind of feelings of hopelessness. You know, you gain weight if you're drinking too much. and it eventually just makes the problem worse. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah, that's a common story, right? People just like, a lot of men, we just like bury it, because it works the short term, and then it just fucks us on the other end, right? So, you mentioned you went to talk therapy and it didn't work. I'm really interested in that because we do talk about that a bit on the show, that I think for a lot of men, especially like masculine dudes, right? Like it doesn't work. Our industry is, I think, really failing men. So I'm curious for you, like, how did you bounce off of it? Well, what didn't work about it for you?
I think it was just, first of all, I went on base, and with someone who had a top secret security clearance, you really had this sense that you could not be honest with these people because everything that they were doing was getting reported back. And sometimes like your commander could get access to your medical records, which is not something you want to happen when you're struggling, especially not as someone who's regularly handling explosives. And really like that happened. So I went to behavioral health. I like told them a little bit about what was going on in my head. And they're always like, oh no, talking to a counselor will never affect your security clearance. But it did. I went to go draw explosives from the ASP to go deal with an IED, and they locked me out of the ASP. I was flagged. I couldn't get explosives. And I was like, I can't do my job now because I was honest with you people.
Yeah, that's fucked. And that happens in workplace settings. I mean, that happens all over the place, right? Where if you get that stigma attached to you, and it just obviously doesn't help. That doesn't help you and doesn't help your mental health. It doesn't help anything because now you're like, well, fuck, like my job was kind of keeping you together, I imagine. And now if you can't do that, it just furthers the spiral,
What are you? I mean, I'm sure you see this all the time, like in the work that you do, like depression and anxiety and these other mental health issues can just be the straw that saps up a man's sense of purpose in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it's like, it destroys our sense of self-efficacy, right? Like the ability to like, we can do stuff, we can affect change. Because for men, that's so much more important to us than like self-esteem. We don't care like what people think about us, but we do care if we can do stuff and if we feel powerful. So I imagine, that power getting taken away from you is like brutal. Because then it's like, we're supposed to just like be a sad person in your barracks or whatever. Like,
oh yeah, I was a sad person in my own house at that time. I was a staff sergeant. So
right. Okay.
At least I got to be sad alone.
Right. Out of the house and sad and pay a mortgage.
Yeah, sad and pay a mortgage.
Yes. So.
Go ahead.
Oh no. Keep going.
And luckily, I was able to get access to these more effective treatments, and it saved my life. Completely saved my life.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. It's like, what's the first one you tried? Well, what was like kind of the leap of faith that you took?
So the leap of faith was on that night. My phone goes off. My buddy invites me over. We're at his house, and he was like, "Hey man, you're fucked up. Like, take what's on the counter." And he pours out something out of a little baggie. It was pure MDMA, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like, man, I used to think that everyone that used these substances was putting holes in their brain, and that like I bought into the dare line bullshit. Like so many of us do. We like, oh man, I don't know about that. My mama told me for the longest time, like I would immediately become like a loser and a drug addict if I ever tried any of this stuff. But I was like, you know what? I'm about to put a big fucking hole in my brain after this anyway, so why not? I might as well.
Yeah, a couple little ones are gonna hurt.
Yeah, a couple little ones can't hurt more than the big one that's coming. So fuck it. And so I tried it, and it was the most transformative experience I'd ever had in my life up to that point. I got to feel joy for the first time, like really in my life, because a lot of us that join the military, we don't always come from the best family backgrounds, to say the least. We're, I always joke that we're just B-team male strippers with an extra sprinkling of daddy issues that are handed guns. And so like, dude, you just being able to feel that complete, utter joy and like connection to another person was not something I'd ever felt before. And it was literally like someone took my soul out of my body, just washed it in bleach and stuck it back in. And I can't even begin to say how powerful that was. And that was one of the things that really made me angry when Neil decided to take his own life, is like, man, if he had experienced that, he'd still be with us. His son would still have a father. And that's the kind of thing that keeps me going, is that, yeah, we have better alternatives. And now, with this business and a couple of the other programs that are put together, we are putting them all in a one-stop shop so we can help people in a really dynamic way get better faster and stay better longer.
Yeah. I mean, I had a similar experience with MDMA. Like just taking that, getting that kind of like mirror of like, for me, it was like, oh my God, the fear is gone. Like I wasn't aware of how afraid I was of everything all the time, and how much self-doubt I had, and how much just like barriers I had to being present and being alive, frankly, that like when it took it away, I was like, wow, there is an alternative, like all these things I thought was just me aren't me. And I think psychedelics can really do that. They can really just like strip away stuff that seems so baked in that you can't even see it when it's right in front of your face.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we question all of these beliefs except for the ones that we hold the closest, and of those we're not even aware. And that's one of the powerful things that psychedelics can do is change your mind, is increase that neuroplasticity and give you a chance to change and just supercharge that whole process. And especially with MDMA, I mean, it's I don't know about you, but I think we all walk around with like a decent amount of social anxiety. Like, I don't want to go talk to that person. Like, I don't want to hold the door open for someone I might actually have to have a human interaction, especially in the age where we're all just staring at our phones all the time. And it becomes kind of this fear response. And that's one of the great things that cascade of serotonin can do for you, is break down those walls.
Yeah. And that was my experience, was like being, oh my God, I was afraid of fucking everything. And I wasn't even aware of that until it was gone. And then it did give me a pathway to work towards in my own therapies and other spiritual psychedelic work, all that stuff. Like just knowing that there was a difference, that my life could be different, is so powerful. And I feel like everyone needs to get that experience, just to be like, yeah, you don't have to be stuck in this hole forever,
This way all the time. And if like there's any message that I think, that any audience would benefit from, it's like, hey, if you're struggling with this stuff, if you're struggling with depression, anxiety, PTSD, you don't have to feel this way all the time. We have the tools to change how your mind is processing things and give you a new perspective. And it's really encouraging to see this kind of stuff come onto the scene in a really powerful way in the mental health community.
Yeah. So let's dig into some of those tools. So what are some of the things that Mind Spa offers, and what are some of the outcomes and mechanisms behind them?
Yeah. So, we really have 5 pillars. So we, do the classical medication management. That's part of the practice. We do culturally competent talk therapy. We work with a lot of veterans, a lot of first responders. We focus heavily on trauma, and that classical, talk therapy kind of it creates the blueprint for how we're going through the rest of these treatments. It kind of creates a focal lens that we can focus on each one of these things that we want to change in our daily lives. And then we get into the power tools. We've got ketamine infusion therapy. So with ketamine, some of the really cool things about ketamine, one, it's actually been classified by the World Health Organization as one of the most important drug discoveries ever. So it downregulates inflammation in both the body and the brain. So if you have someone who has like traumatic brain injury or just depression, anxiety, and PTSD that are chronic, all of those things cause a ton of inflammation in the brain. And that's one of the reasons people become treatment resistant, is because of that inflammatory process in the brain. That inflammatory process shunts off blood flow and really just disengages some of the neural tracts between our prefrontal cortex and the rest of our brain, which causes a lot of problems down the road. So ketamine downregulates that inflammation. It kind of lets your brain breathe again, so to speak, and it also increases neuroplasticity. So it can make things like talk therapy more effective, because everything we do in mental health, and I'm sure you see this in your practice too, everything we do in mental health is centered around one thing, and that is rewiring the brain. Unless you're talking about treating traumatic brain injuries, that's a different thing. Like, we got to dig a little more into like the cellular process of how the brain heals for that. But for these other pieces, the anxiety, depression, and PTSD, it really is at its core a wiring problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like unlinking those neurons, right, and like getting people to break out of those automatic patterns. Because like you said, I think people that are truly clinical, and I say that with a caveat, because I think all those terms are way overused nowadays, right? But like truly have clinical mental health issues, it's like your brain's getting hijacked, and it's just you're going through those like myelinated channels and you're just repeating the same thing over and over again, and it really is like a biological issue. It's not just like, it's not choice in the same way that I think a lot of like even counselors believe it is. It's addiction. It's an addiction. Yeah. Right.
Neurons that fire together, wire together more cohesively in a network. That's what habits are. It's, every time you do something, it's like you're adding, more lanes to this highway. And before too long, it's the highway coming out of Beijing that's 30 lanes wide. And electricity follows the path of least resistance. So you have a highway for this electrical current to go through. It's going to use it. So, that's why using these tools is so powerful, because we can kind of break that up and create new pathways for those biochemical signals to travel on.
Yeah. So think more about the ketamine, right? So like, how does that work? Do we understand the mechanism of that yet? Or how is that? What kind of outcomes do people expect? Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on which psychiatrist you talk to, they'll say like, we don't understand it, but like, we can draw some pretty clear conclusions about the mechanism of action. And that really is that downregulation and inflammation. So you are allowing, and the reason that's so important, let me just step back here. The reason that downregulation of inflammation is so important is because the blood vessels in your brain are very, very small. They can get so small that a single red blood cell can travel down them at a time. And it doesn't take a whole lot of inflammation before all of a sudden you're trying to suck a golf ball through a garden hose. Why does that matter? Well, if you can't deliver oxygen to a cell, on the other side of that blood vessel, it can't make ATP, which is what all of our cells run on. It can't make ATP as efficiently. We have a process in our cell's mitochondria called cellular respiration. It requires glucose and oxygen. If you don't have those two ingredients, you can't do it. You take away the oxygen, and all of a sudden, the cell, the mitochondria can't use that process to make energy. And cellular respiration is a fairly clean way to make ATP. If it can't get enough oxygen, it switches over to what's called anaerobic glycolysis, which is a fermentation method of making energy, and it's dirty. It's also how cancer cells make energy. So, you go through this long enough, this is why you see increased risks of like cancer, dementia, Alzheimer's in these individuals who've been chronically depressed, have PTSD, especially TBI. Like there is an actual biological process that's predisposing you to these long-term neurodegenerative effects. So the first thing we want to do is target that inflammation. So let those red blood cells get there and deliver oxygen to our cells. All of a sudden, the cell can breathe again. It can create energy in a cleaner way, and that has a pretty rapid effect. There's also, the fact that ketamine is what's called an NMDA receptor agonist. So it acts on glutamate. Glutamate is one of the primary molecules. It's the primary excitatory molecule in us humans and us mammals. So glutamate is responsible for like getting cells to do shit. And so ketamine goes up to the receptor on the cell and it goes, hey, like boom, boom, boom. Hey, there's no glutamate like outside this cell. All your shit's out. Like get all the glutamate out. So most of the glutamate in the cell gets dumped into the cerebral spinal fluid. It leaves the cell. When it goes back in, it gets reallocated. So that molecule, that like one molecule of glutamate that was responsible for, creating energy on that mitochondria is no longer doing that. It gets reallocated. So that's part of the reason that we think it works so well is you're basically doing Control-Alt-Delete for your brain. Yeah, so that was an overly scientific explanation. I'm sorry.
No, I find that really fascinating. I studied neuroscience in undergrad, so I'm able to follow it. Yeah. And it's fascinating that it does just like reset everything. So it sounds like glutamate gets then redistributed and maybe distributed differently or more evenly. Like what do you see when the redistribution happens?
I can't speak to like how, if redistribution is more even, but it does get reallocated. We know that much. Yeah, so that's between that, the downregulation and inflammation, because ketamine downregulates inflammatory cytokine production, and the increase in brain-derived neurotropic factor, that's the neuroplasticity. Those three effects together are why we think ketamine has such a powerful effect. And I mean, you're talking, depending on which study you read, between a 70 to 80% response rate for major depressive disorder. It's like, I believe it's 67% for PTSD, and it shifts a little bit depending on which study you're reading. So, let's just say between 60 to 80%, which is fantastic. Now, the thing to remember about ketamine is it is not a magic pill. It is a bridging therapy. So it's a great way to take someone from like super acute symptoms down to manageable. And that provides a window for us to work with other tools that can create more long-lasting results.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. Yeah. So say more about that of like what a client would experience. Because I've seen that. I've seen that where it's like for the highly acute clients, it seems really effective. And I'll ask them like what changed. And they're like, I don't know, but everything's different. Like it's very vague. They can't seem to really explain like exactly what's different, but they know that in some ways everything is different. I've heard that a lot from people. But yeah, they do seem to have some symptoms, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, now it's time for talk therapy or lifestyle changes or, audio relationships or whatever, change your job. When we have the stuff that's like actually is making your life fucked up. But yeah, like from your experience, you've worked with way more people certainly than I have that have gone through this. Like what would the average client feel afterwards, or what would be kind of their lived experience of going through a successful course of ketamine treatment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking from firsthand experience. I've done I've done dozens of ketamine journeys myself. I probably do it maybe once a quarter, every 6 months. Just gets the anxiety monkey off my back as a business owner. Everybody who's a business owner understands that little fucker, he'll get you.
He's always there.
He's always there. He's always there until you do a ketamine infusion. Then he takes a break.
All right, maybe I should call you then.
Yeah, man, come on down.
Yeah.
But as far as how it feels, every ketamine infusion can be a little bit different. So we only do IV ketamine because it's, in our opinion, it's a safer method of administration. That whole experience has breaks on it. And we also step people up in dosage. So we start with a relatively low dose, especially for people who aren't experienced, and we ramp that dose up over each infusion until we get to that dissociative effect. And I would say like the dissociative effect, it feels very floaty. You feel outside your body. You close your eyes and you'll like, at least this is, what I've experienced is like it can be like a full movie behind your eyelids. And especially the way that we do it, we really work on guiding that experience. So, in one of our ketamine rooms for more visual people, like the whole wall's a projector. We have super comfortable accommodations, weighted blankets, so we can kind of help ground you. And then the nurse is there in the room the entire time. And then for our more sensory adapted clients, like we have a vibroacoustic chair and customized content. So the chair's got speakers on it, or under it rather. And, we can guide people through a really profound experience with specially designed music and an hour-long experience. And we've got really great feedback on, how that creates more of a visual experience when their eyes are closed, and how it helps resource them so people feel safe. And that's really what it comes down to when we're talking about processing trauma. This is what I'm going to talk about is the reason that that MDMA is so effective. You create that sense of biological safety using the drug. Boom. Now I feel what we call fully resourced, and I can now engage with my trauma without activating the emotional response. So I'm not activating my nervous system's normal response to, the memory of my best friend burning to death in a Humvee. Normally, boom, that would be a trigger and your whole nervous system is going. But now in this resource state, we can decouple that. And once we decouple it, we can process that traumatic event apart from that emotional response. And that's how you get these really great numbers with MDMA therapy. And we can do that with other substances as well.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, because I asked a question to tons of people on the show, and I never gotten a fully satisfying answer of like, they always say trauma is held in the body, right? And like, when you see people that do MDMA or ketamine, they have these like spasms, these twitches, or they have like that kind of discharge. Do we know what that is? But like do we know biologically what is happening there?
I mean, it's probably just really just a twitch. I mean, you're sending a lot more electrical signals. So, with ketamine a little less so, but like with like LSD, psilocybin, you're increasing your brain's output voltage by several times, like almost an order of magnitude is what some of the studies have shown. So, you're sending a lot more electrical signals through the central nervous system. So that's what I would say was probably the most likely for that. But when it comes to processing, it is that sense of biological safety and the neuroplasticity that is upregulated that helps.
Yeah, because I've seen that happen with people of like, they'll shake, right? Or they'll have tremors, or they might even like, it's almost like PT in some ways. I've seen people like increase their range of motion, especially if there's like a physical injury or like a car accident or something like that, where it kind of like opens up like new biological pathways and new muscular pathways. I've always found that really fascinating, how like physical it can be for people.
Well, that is a deeply ingrained part of our biology, Mark. I mean, if you look at, you go onto the African savannah and you watch a lion chase a gazelle, right? The gazelle gets away in this little story, but lion chases the gazelle, boom, boom, boom. It almost dies. It almost gets chomped like 3 or 4 times. Finally, it gets away. Lion's done. It chills out. The gazelle walks off. What does it do? It walks off to a safe spot, and then it just shakes
like crazy. Yeah,
shakes like crazy. It literally is shedding that trauma and getting back into that parasympathetic nervous system state. That is how we shift, how that thing is shifting from a sympathetic nervous system response to a parasympathetic nervous system state. And I think that that's another kind of explanation for how that's happening, because so many of the people that that we both treat are stuck in that sympathetic nervous system response for a lot of time during the day, and releasing that is deeply ingrained in our biology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't have like venues to do that. I think especially as men, right, to just like go in the corner and shake everything. We're weird as hell, right? Like we kind of have to like keep the stick all the way up our ass most of the time and like try to keep everything together. So we don't get a chance to do that. I think it just builds up and builds up, and kind of like maybe a little bit of your story, it can come up as drinking, or it can come out as anger for some guys, right? Or it can come out as porn addiction, right? Like at some point it has to get discharged some way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's helped me a ton, because I'm one of those quick to anger guys, is just my mantra when I'm in that state, like when you're just spinning on things, is I'm angry because I'm anxious, and just repeating that and be like, okay, I'm not actually pissed off at my wife for forgetting to take the trash out this morning. I'm angry because I'm spinning on what that whole thing is going to mean for me the rest of the week. Not being able to put anything in the can, and then the whole house is going to stink, and then I'm going to get raccoons in my garage, and they're going to fuck up my snowboard. Like, that whole spinning cycle, it happens to so many of us.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just like chewing on it. And then, I think a lot of men like never express that, right? They never talk to their wife like, hey, can you take the trash out? Right? It could be like something so minor. But we just, it could become like all of a sudden everything is ruined and the raccoons live in my garage now.
Well, I think that drawing that corollary between anger and anxiety is really powerful, because instead of going, hey, I'm really pissed off that you didn't take the trash out, it can be, hey, the trash didn't get taken out and it's making me incredibly anxious, and here's where my mind is going. Here's the whole sequelae of events that's causing me to just bunch up like this. And being able to communicate that and bring awareness to that process is very healthy for relationships.
Very healthy. Yeah, I mean that's
it's one of the reasons I'm still married.
Right. Yeah, and women want that. I mean, women want to know where we're at, good, bad, and ugly. So the more detail you can provide, I mean, that's a really good tool to share with the listeners around that. Well, so let's keep moving down the menu. So what else you got? You guys got?
Yeah, what else we got? So the other thing we use a lot, we use transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS. That is an MRI coil that's in either kind of a wand or a helmet, and we use that MRI coil to create a magnetic field under the surface of the scalp, so actually in your brain tissue, and that magnetic field tricks your neurons into clustering more densely in a network. We talked about Hebb's law, neurons that fire together wire together. This is hijacking Hebb's law and taking your neurons to the gym on steroids. Because every time you pulse that magnet, you're getting those neurons to boom, 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 cluster more densely. We use it to treat depression, along with many other things. It's actually FDA approved for treating depression. And when you do that, you are increasing the density of the neurons in that prefrontal cortex. So it basically gives you a dimmer switch against your symptoms. So whenever we have that limbic response, let's just take PTSD, for example, you've got an underactive prefrontal cortex and an overactive amygdala. So your amygdala has a louder megaphone than your executive functioning center. So it's like trying to think your way out of a panic attack. The reason that doesn't work is because your limbic system has a more powerful megaphone. So what do we do with TMS? We're functionally giving your executive functioning center a bigger megaphone so it can tell the rest of your brain to shut the fuck up. And it does. And it's the efficacy rates are great. Like for major depressive disorder, 75%. And that's response rate with a 50% remission rate. So, non-drug therapy that can have that kind of result. And it also has off-label uses for PTSD and anxiety. So very, very powerful tool. And it's covered by every major insurance company. So it's one of the big tools in our arsenal. And the really cool thing as well is that when they looked at the randomized controlled studies, they found that even 2 years after treatment, there was a large subset of the individuals who had full symptom remission retained it. So, this is creating sustainable neural networks in the brain.
Yeah. How do you diagnose where to target the magnet?
It's clinical. So like for depression, we're targeting the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. For PTSD, we move that medially. And for anxiety, it's over on the right side. I can't remember the medical term for that right now, but
okay. Yeah. So it's based on the diagnosis, and then there's a standard place where you just hit it.
Yeah. You're hitting different structures in the brain that are responsible for different processes.
Yeah. Is there any risk to that? Because I can imagine a listener being like, I don't want a magnet in my brain. Like, what are you talking about? What are the risks?
TMS is one of the safest things that we do in psychiatry. There is a literal 1 in a million chance that it could cause a seizure. That's literally 1 in a million as far as that risk goes. That risk can go up if you're using alcohol. We don't treat anybody who's actively drinking, or if you're hungover from the night before. We don't do that treatment. But it is incredibly safe. The only real side effects is a little discomfort on the scalp where we are stimulating, and then it can cause sometimes, especially at the beginning of treatment when your brain's not used to it, it can cause a slight headache, which you can just treat with over-the-counter Advil or something. Yeah, and I mean, the cool thing is when you put all these things together, they work even better. So the next thing we do is hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and HBOT is a fantastic treatment. So earlier we were talking about all those red blood cells getting shunted off. So what hyperbaric oxygen therapy does is you get into a chamber. The chamber is pressurized, and in that pressurized chamber, you're breathing concentrated oxygen. Now that forces oxygen into your blood plasma because of the increased pressure, something called Henry's law of chemistry. Gas will diffuse into a liquid at a given rate. You increase the pressure, it increases the amount of gas that goes into that liquid. So instead of relying on that red blood cell to carry oxygen in this environment where there's a lot of inflammation in the brain, we hyperoxygenate the blood plasma, and that basically creates a pipeline to your entire brain. It bathes the brain in oxygen, which allows you to create more energy, which is great for healing and rewiring. And that's the kind of core principle here is we use HBOT to supercharge the effects from all of these things. And I mean, the studies coming out of Israel for PTSD are super impressive. They're showing after 40 to 60 treatments, an efficacy rate of 75% for treating post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, like 75% response rate. That's insane. Like, you know, we've got all the solutions for these things. They're right here. And you know, when you use them in concert, again, you get to use the best of kind of both worlds. Like ketamine takes that inflammation down, so you like immediately get relief from like post-concussive migraines. We're able to just take the pressure off from a symptom reduction standpoint. And then with TMS, we're sending your brain to the gym. And with hyperbaric, we're making it so you can do more reps. We're making it so we're getting more out of all of this from a cellular perspective. And the talk therapy comes in to guide us and focus us on what we're trying to do, what we're trying to change, and where we're trying to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's impressive. And it does sound like a really complete suite of things that like you're covering all the bases. You know, I'm curious, my mind goes to like, does this turn into biohacking? Like at what point does this just become like peak performance, optimal brain function stuff?
Pretty quickly.
Like, yeah. Like, how about that? Like, I'm imagining like, you know, Captain America, super soldier serum type stuff, right? Like,
I mean, it's not that cool. I can't punch through a car yet. Trust me, yet. I mean, honestly, it does it pretty damn quickly. Like, so we, like in my inpatient program that I started, we're doing neuropsychiatric exams on both ends. So looking at executive function, short-term memory, long-term memory, social acuity, a bunch of different metrics, over 15 of them. And the big one was executive function. So like, how well do you do problem solving? And what we found is that when we treated people who had post-traumatic stress disorder, after 45 days of treatment, they increased their executive functioning by 45%. That's for PTSD, folks who are struggling with PTSD. For TBI, 125% increase in executive function after 45 days, and all of their symptoms are gone. And we're talking like, we're talking guys who have literally like woken up every single day for the past 19 years with a headache, and all of a sudden pain's gone and their brain's functioning better. Like, that's insane.
That's crazy. Yeah. And how does their executive function compare to just like normal controls? Like people that don't have diagnoses, right? That are just like,
anytime you get TBI, it's gonna be less.
Well, no, I'm saying post-treatment. Like,
oh yeah, post-treatment. I mean, whenever you're comparing two people, you're kind of comparing apples to oranges. Everyone's brain's different. You can really only compare, someone to themselves to get like an accurate data. But it was pretty impressive. You can look at it against a normative database as well, and they were scoring. I can't give you good data on that. Yeah, I don't want to misquote the work that we've done.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess where my mind goes, like, does that return them to like a normal enough baseline? Do they actually exceed normal? Right? It's like what does their standard of living become? Is where that question's coming from.
I have watched guys go through this protocol and go from damn near homeless, jobless, without the ability to hold down a relationship, to getting a new job that they've always wanted, starting a healthy relationship, and being able to go back to work, full time without those extra considerations that we would see with someone who's suffering from migraines all the time.
I mean, that's incredible. Yeah, so they're back on track. Right?
Yeah, absolutely back on track, and that's what we need to do. Like we have one of the largest epidemics in suicide in the world is our veterans here in the U.S. I mean, if you're a veteran, you're 1.5 times more likely to commit suicide than a non-veteran. If you have a traumatic brain injury, that's 3 times more likely to commit suicide than someone who doesn't. And the medical establishment right now just says pills, therapy, that's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they use almost like a jail type method. They're like, okay, we're gonna like surveil you, right? Like just like put you in a program or something where they can just watch you and make sure you don't do it. But that's not helping with those urges. That's not helping with the mental state. That's not helping with like the day-to-day life of being suicidal. Like, okay, you might not have access to a firearm, but like you're still thinking about it every day,
Yeah, and it's not like you're going to stay there in that situation forever. You're going to get out of there, and you just, I've talked to so many vets who have been through, inpatient at the VA domiciliary, and they're like, dude, it was mental health jail. Like, you get treated like a criminal because you felt, you were in such a bad state that you wanted to hurt yourself. Like, that's not how to do this.
It's not good for your mental health. Right? I feel like
no, it's terrible.
You're in jail, right?
Promise me you won't kill yourself, or I'm going to put you in mental health jail.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, you've got a plan? Oh, you have access to lethal means? Get over there. Like, we're gonna bring the cops to your house and drag you away for for wanting to end your life. Man, there is nothing that I could think of that would be a better recipe for wanting to off yourself than struggling super hard after you come back home and someone calling the police to haul you off in front of your family because you're struggling. That's like, come on. It's dumb.
It's dumb. Yeah. And I mean, I would say a lot. It's like, when legal gets involved with mental health, it's over. When I first jobs work, it's like in a DUI, treatment center and doing drug court and that kind of stuff. And it's like the worst. So that's the most ineffective treatment ever, because all the incentives is for them to lie. I mean, like, I would, right? It's like, lie, pretend like you're doing, fill the surveys how we want us to fill it out, get off paper, make it happen. Like, it doesn't actually do anything. And then they, still have the issues when they come out.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
Well, that's one of I think that there's a big push in this industry for like psychedelic medicine, especially on the substance abuse side, and for TMS, quite frankly. One of my relatives, I just put him through the Patriot Power Up program up in Idaho. Severe, he caught a meth addiction early on in life, and then kind of got clean, and then got into cocaine, and it was bad. It was really bad. And put him through that program and used most of these modalities. We didn't use the ketamine because he had been abusing ketamine. So we put him through the TMS ketamine and talk therapy, and ever since then he's been good to go. He's been out of the program for several months now, and has been able to, in his own words, walk past a plate full of drugs and not engage. So, there's so much we could do. There's so many people we could help. We need to get these things out of the realm of, we were talking about before the show, alternative medicine. How about more effective medicine?
Yeah, it's medicine, right? I mean, this should be like the standard of care. I agree.
Oh, for sure.
I was going to ask you, like what does the long term look like as far as maintenance? Do we need to come in and like re-up, or is like what does that look like?
It depends on the severity of someone's symptoms.
Yeah.
If you look at the data coming out of Israel, what they're showing with like traumatic brain injury patients is after about 80 hyperbaric oxygen therapy sessions, they are not needing to continue treatment or come back. And we see that to a little bit of a lesser degree with transcranial magnetic stimulation. There's a subset, I believe it's like 50% of those in remission no longer qualify for the diagnosis 2 years out. And that's the most data we have on that. But I think like 2 years out is showing you there's been a significant change. A lot can change in someone's life in 2 years.
For sure. Yeah. It sounds like more data is coming in, or we can see what it looks like in like the decade type of thing. I'm curious, this is probably just naivety. Like, can we measure inflammation in the brain with like an fMRI or something? Yeah.
100% we can.
But you could see a legit decrease just in like the physical side of things.
So it's called a nuclear SPECT scan. Is it? Single photon electronic computed topography. I think I got that right. So this is if you ever seen like Daniel Amen, that's so pretty famous psychiatrist, does a lot of SPECT scans, And with so what a SPECT scan is you go into the doctor's office, they inject you with it's a slightly radioactive isotope that's tied to a glucose molecule. And when your brain cells break up that glucose molecule to make ATP, it shoots off a single photon and the camera catches it. And that process creates a 3D image. And in that 3D image, we can see, how your brain is utilizing resources. And you can see if there's inflammation in the brain, because it'll show up, like in Daniel Amen's stuff, it shows up. He uses like negative space to show that. So it'll look like a brain that's got like Swiss cheese in it, or it's made of Swiss cheese because it's got all that inflammatory process going on in the prefrontal cortex. With like a quantitative SPECT scan, you can see like a heat map. And so you can see the areas, like even in a cross section of where the brain is inflamed. And that, boom, there you go. And that's a pretty reasonable facsimile for, a traumatic brain injury, because that's like, you can see a focal area of damage in a specific spot.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, to me, that does make this be like, this should just be the treatment then, right? If you can like link it with a diagnostic and you can just see if it worked, it's like, I mean, that's science, right? Like the thing reduces the symptoms. So, okay, well, as we're nearing the end here, like, where should someone get started? I mean, if someone's curious, they're listening to this, if they're like, wow, I didn't even know this stuff existed, where should they go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in engaging with us, so you can find all this information on our website, mindspadenver.com. We're here in the Denver Tech Center. If you are interested and want to make an appointment, feel free to give us a call, 303-327-0350 or info@mindspadenver.com, and one of my staff members will reach out to you.
Great. Awesome. Well, all that stuff will be in the show notes. If you guys want to check that out, listeners, on the show notes, for those who don't know where it is, we had some questions about that a while back. It's just the description of the podcast. So whatever you're listening on, if you just hit more, read more, learn more, whatever, all that stuff will be in there. So Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, and listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Do all the social stuff, like, share, subscribe, do all that. The more you share, the better, especially if there's someone that is struggling with a TBI or clinical depression or, anxiety or PTSD, a first responder, a veteran in your life that needs to hear this, needs to know that there's hope. I think Sam's message is incredible for those that, are feeling at the end of the rope. Maybe they are suicidal. Maybe they have trouble integrating back into regular life. I think Sam and his team can really help you all. So share this, get the message out, help break down the stigma of men's mental health. And thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you next week on the episode of Men's Therapy Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.